In our last lecture for the week, let's look at peer-reviewed research, finding scholarly sources, and then a brief look at how to read and respond to them. Well, I wonder if about now you're a little bit frustrated. We've talked about various kinds of research, and yet we've critiqued the credibility of those sources. Web sources, for example, with their amateurish research and inadequately supported claims, personal prejudices, and commercial interests. Then we looked at periodicals, their structural bias, their superficial inquiries, their commercial interests. We looked at bias itself, unfair selection and characterization, marginalization and exclusion of certain perspectives. Well, where are we going to find better information? Let's consider professional and academic research, practiced by communities of scholars and practitioners, experts committed to a disciplined research methodology. Shall we trust these? Our cynic would probably say no. Those experts, they're just as biased as anybody else. They always contradict each other. What's true one day is false the next. Their theories are riddled with holes. I don't trust them. I believe what my nose tells me. Now, there's a popular belief that truth is an absolute seamless whole. It doesn't change over time. It never contradicts itself. Now, that may be true of God's truth, but it's never true of human understanding. And if we think of professional and academic research, we must confess it's a human model of reality. It's incomplete, it evolves, it's often inconsistent. The cynic looks at this and says, well, that's why I don't believe in experts. I'll believe what I want to believe. Is the cynic correct? Are experts untrustworthy because their truth is fallibly human? Well, by those standards, all human understanding is untrustworthy. But those are not the appropriate standards for evaluating research. Researchers are playing a different game. Most people don't understand that academic researchers don't seek truth. That is, truth as a finished product, a complete, unchanging whole. They're committed to a journey, a method which will produce more and more trustworthy levels of understanding. Each stage in the journey leads to the next. Each level of understanding is trustworthy at that current stage of inquiry, but we expect it to be imperfect, to be limited, a launching pad for the next stage of the journey. Critical reason understands the research game and evaluates it on its own terms. The basis for research credibility lies in a different place from what most people think it does. The key is peer review, that is, a commitment to accountability by members of research communities who share bodies of knowledge. They share methodologies for increasing that knowledge, and they submit their work to each other for community review. We could refer to these research communities as global research disciplines. For example, biology, astrophysics, sociology, epidemiology. Then there are also local research communities, university research programs, independent laboratories like the Fermi Lab in Chicago, and professional researchers, for example, people who study consumer behavior. Peer-reviewed research is always informed by the current state of knowledge within a discipline. It's furthermore subject to initial community approval, regulated by whatever methodology the discipline has developed. This is supported by cooperation and collaboration, and it's shared through publication. But the key is that it's always subject to further review, replication, and testing. So, results that pass at least the initial test of peer review are never infallible, but they have demonstrated a certain amount of credibility, and their expected limitations and errors will lead to further research and refinement. Over time, peer-reviewed understanding becomes stronger and stronger. Often it's tested by practical applications. For example, the principles of aerodynamics are tested every day, thousands of times by every airline flight around the world. Peer review's core accountability is vigilance against personal and partisan bias. Now, every human being has personal and partisan bias. Professional researchers work against that. They develop a fidelity to evidence, often empirical evidence, that is, evidence that's tangible, observable, and quantifiable. The result is empirical methodology. In this method, one proposes a hypothesis, a prediction that can be tested through research methodology. Then one follows strict protocols to gather data, observation, experimentation, and quantification. Note, research protocols vary given the research discipline. Then, the raw data is reported in detail before an interpretation is offered. The data is then interpreted. Does it confirm or refute the hypothesis, or is it indeterminate? And good empirical researchers always recognize the limits in the data. They draw a conclusion which precisely limits itself to what has been established, and they indicate lingering research questions and the need for further research. Peer-reviewed research journals are written by and for experts in a research field. They're edited by and through peer review. That means that the editor is already an expert in the field, so the author sends in an article to the editor, who subjects that article to peer review before publication. But then after publication, it's not over. Studies are replicated. Can the results be confirmed? Limitations or mistakes are challenged by other researchers, and this always leads to further research. The ultimate key to good research may surprise you. It's humility. Now, I'm not talking about personal humility. Researchers need to be determined and confident, maybe even arrogant. The key is humility in making claims. Good research never claims the truth. It makes limited, precise claims of what is known and of what remains unknown. I've been making references to an article by Andrew Grogan Kaler. He's an author of a scholarly study on the effect of corporal punishment on antisocial behavior on children. This is from Social Work Research. And notice Grogan Kaler's conclusion. Corporal punishment had a non-trivial effect on children's antisocial behavior in later years. Non-trivial effect. He doesn't make a claim about the ultimate truth of the issue. He modestly limits his claim to what he feels are the results of his study. Why then do people so often distrust professional researchers? Sometimes it's the blame of the journalist who reports on research and translates careful, limited claims into the emotional fever that sells newspapers. So a journalist might come along and say, Grogan Kaler proves that corporal punishment scars children for life. Now here's the thing, Grogan Kaler never said that. But people read it, and then the negative view of research responds to misleading reporting. Readers understand that a grandiose claim has been made, and then maybe later the grandiose claim is disproven, so they feel the experts are not to be believed, but the researcher never intended the grandiose claim. Okay, you're probably wondering, well, how do I find these magical articles? Well, Bethel Library Tour 3 will help you understand how to do this. You can also explore the University Library Using Research Databases page. Here's the address. This lists special databases that give you exclusive access to articles from peer-reviewed journals not available widely on the internet. For example, there's a page that lists all our databases, and then there are really powerful subject and research guides, pages with instructions targeting a given field. For example, one on business and economics. Now, some of our databases are multidisciplinary. Academic Search Premier, Expanded Academic Index. These databases draw on materials from all kinds of fields of scholarship. When you're setting your search filters, you can set these databases to look only for journal articles, peer-reviewed sources, and so forth. And also be sure to filter for full text available online. That will save you a lot of time. We also have specialized research databases that target a particular field. Let's look at a few examples. Suppose that you're in biblical and theological studies. Well, you'll want to be familiar with the ATLA Religion Database and the Christian Periodical Index. Are you in economics? Well, you'll want to know about Econ Lit. In education, the major database is ERIC. In nursing, it's CINAHL. In psychology, it's called PsycInfo. In sociology, it's Social Services Abstracts and Sociological Abstracts. In the empirical sciences, you might use the Science Direct journals. Now, I don't want you to spend forever in these databases, but you should at least become familiar with the database that's key for your field. And sometimes remember to look at complementary fields. For example, some topics are studied by people in education, psychology, and sociology. Scholarly articles are powerful and credible, but beware. They're written by and for professional scholars and practitioners, and sometimes undergraduates find them hard to follow. Let's talk about how to read one. Notice that there are sample articles in Moodle or the classroom, depending on whether your course meets only online or also face-to-face. The sample articles are studies of corporal punishment. The first thing to pay attention to is the kind of article you're looking at. Some journal articles are literature reviews which survey current knowledge, and one of the most important things they do is to show controversies between divergent viewpoints in a field. The other kind is a publication which presents original research, and this research is often governed by strict methodology. Now, when you're dealing with journal articles, your best friend is the abstract. The abstract is a one-paragraph synopsis of the article, and it's often enough to assess the relevance and value of the article before you go any further. Most databases include the abstract in the listing, which is very handy. Don't go beyond an abstract unless you really value the article. The abstract also gives you a guide to comprehension. If you're going to read the whole article, first be sure you understand the abstract. This will help you make sense of the rest of the article. Articles in some fields follow very strict protocols in terms of laying out the sections. They'll begin with an introduction and perhaps a hypothesis. Be very clear on this. What hypothesis is being tested? Now, please notice that literature reviews may not offer a hypothesis. Then there's a section which offers a literature review, even if it's an empirical article presenting original research. Scan this to get a sense of the overall context. Then there's a review of the research methodology, especially in empirical studies. Make sure you understand what the experiment or the study was trying to do. How did it work? Please pay attention to the fact that there are details, although you won't want to get lost in them. Understand that this methodology will be closely critiqued by colleagues. Then there's a review of the raw results, especially in empirical studies. Colleagues will want to see specifics of what was found, and they may very well challenge the author's interpretation. Your interpretation comes after the raw results, and the interpretation looks at those results in light of the hypothesis. Finally, there's usually a recognition of limitations and questions for further research. Now, let's be honest. Some of an article may go right over your head, but we need to understand the basic structure of the article and the research argument. What is being claimed? What's the evidence? What are the limits of the evidence? Of course, we only have 5 weeks for this course, and a research project could take a year or longer. So we have to be smart about limiting our inquiries. It's very easy to get lost in searches like this. It's a good idea to set strict limits. I mean, you can even get out an egg timer and have it go off after an hour. How much time are you going to spend on your web search? Maybe 1 or at most 2 hours. How much time in the databases? Maybe 3 or 4 hours. Then stop. Your job is not to gather all the evidence there is or all the sources there are. That's impossible in a short period of time. You might want to become aware of, let's say, 10 journal articles, but you're not actually going to read them all until you're ready. Closely read only a couple of articles. A clear-eyed reading of one article would be much better than foggy, confused readings of several articles. Ask for help as needed. And through it all, think critically. But what does that mean? Does it mean that you're going to critique the methods of the experts like our cynic? Well, no, you're almost certainly not in a position to critique the methodology of experts. You could recognize its limits, but we are going to think critically anyway. What has been claimed? What has not been claimed? What has been demonstrated and what has not been shown? How do your findings relate to your hypothesis? One of the important things you'll critique is your own thinking. What do you know and what do you not know? These will be the heart of your essay.